Aloha, namaste. This is Alexis Cox with Radha Home Yoga, and I'm here to bring you our full moon forecast for this evening, actually, Friday the 13th. Doing this a little bit last minute, but we are going to have our full moon at 9:33 p.m. here, Pacific Daylight Time, and it is in the star of Purva Bhadrapada in the sign of Aquarius, sidereal Aquarius. So we have Purva Bhadrapada flanking both Aquarius and Pisces. And we're at the very end of Aquarius. We're at 26 degrees, 58 seconds of Aquarius. This star is a star of awakening. It's a star where we wake up and realize there's more. There's more than our body. There's more than our mind even. There's more than just the nuts and bolts that we see moving around in society and our specific ambitions and our specific drives and things that come about really strong in Capricorn, the sign before Aquarius. We start to really want to move towards the future, and we're moving from the futuristic, intellectual, visionary part of Aquarius into that more spiritual, mystical, watery realm of Pisces. So it's a place where we're taking that mental energy and that part of us that can think or realize or imagine something different into the realm where we really start to realize it and in a wiser way, in a more intuitive way, and in a way that is beyond even what we can make, or draw or think of or anything like that, where it's something that is like our own being, the fabric of who we are, merging with that which is greater than us. So this is a real spiritual realm of Pisces. It's like we're getting there. And the way that this comes about is through a lightning flash of insight. So this is the symbol of Purva Bhadrapada, is this sort of flash of awakening where it's like, oh yeah, I see it. I see the door to enlightenment. I see how I'm beyond my body. I see how I'm beyond even my mind, and I realize I'm a spiritual being. But what it also is the early blessed step. So there's another star called Uttara Bhadrapada, which is fully in Pisces, and that step is where we go deep and do the work, and actually walk further to the door and open it and go in, as opposed to just seeing it. Sometimes people have these sort of awakening experiences, oftentimes using different kinds of aids, maybe plant medicine or something like that. They might have an experience where they're like, wow, I see it, I get it, I understand it. But there's a difference between seeing it and knowing it's there, and then actually literally walking through the door and doing that work to merge and to really get there. So that happens later and in Pisces. But this star, this Purva Bhadrapada, is our first awakening, our first insight, especially the early part of it, which is the part that's in Aquarius, where we're not even in that really mystical sign of Pisces yet. We're still in the intellectual realm. We're still in the part where we're working with our faculties and our five senses, and we're not quite into that sixth intuitive sense yet. Purva Bhadrapada is ruled by Aja Ekapada, who is the one-footed goat. And the way I like to imagine is this sort of, the goat is on the mountain, the goat can see the mountaintop, but it's one-footed and it can't make its way all the way up to the top yet. So we're there and we can see it. Well, I shouldn't say we're there. We can see it, but we're not there yet. This Aquarius section of the zodiac is where we are imagining futuristic systems and ways of doing things, especially in sort of a social structure or systems and structures that fuel our society as a whole. And we're trying to reimagine those in ways that can benefit everyone, because the new moon 2 weeks ago, as I spoke about my new moon report, was in Leo, where we're sort of standing in our power, standing in our strength, standing in our greatness, and it's all about me, and everyone's looking at me, and I want to be the leader, and that's the most important part, is how can I lead? And Aquarius is kind of the opposite. It's very humble, and I really don't want to lead. I want everyone to be equal part leader. And how can we come up with ways to make that so? The old system's gone. You know, as I was talking about in the last report, that new moon was in Magha, which is the beginning of Leo, and it has a lot to do with ancestors and lineage and stuff like that. Aquarius is the opposite. It's where we're like, forget the past, you know, the past didn't serve us, and this sort of hierarchical rule doesn't serve us. Let's, you know, disseminate that and create something that's more for all, and more intellectual and intelligent and crafted, as opposed to passed on, as opposed to something that's been gifted from ancestry. So it's a very different way of looking at things. And as I said, we're going to start to move into the more spiritual end of this nakshatra as we go into Pisces, but right now the moon is still in Aquarius. So we're in this intellectual moment where we're feeling more humble than we were 2 weeks ago. And also Venus and Mercury, two planets that were in Leo 2 weeks ago, also making us very lion-y. It was Mars, Venus, Mercury, Sun, and the moon all in Leo. Those two have now moved into Virgo, which is Mercury's other sign, Gemini being the one sign that's more of an air sign. Virgo is the earth sign and the feminine sign of Mercury. So not only have we sort of humbled down on our full moon, but our sense of happiness and pleasure and relating to others, Venus, has moved out of the, you know, super proud and, you know, lion-y place of Leo into the really muted and much more self-conscious sign of Virgo. Virgo is, Venus is actually debilitated in Virgo because it's where we are super self-conscious. It's hard to be super happy. It's hard to be pleasure-oriented when we're constantly, you know, nitpicking every detail, and both on others and ourselves. So it starts with ourselves. It starts with this sort of self-effacing reality where we're just noticing every little flaw about ourselves, and then it gravitates towards noticing all those little flaws and everything about other people, and especially romantic partners, but really any other person. So we notice flaws in our physical appearance. We notice flaws in our, you know, everything. Maybe our outfit has a rip on it, and then suddenly that drives us crazy. Whereas in Leo, we might have ripped it more and been like, this is the new style, everybody follow me. In Virgo, it's like, oh, okay, let me make it look pristine again. Let me make it look like it did when I first bought it. Let me make me look like I did when I was younger. Let me, you know, clean, and clean away all that's not perfect. And that's where Virgo gets us in trouble, because we're never going to be perfect, and we're never going to be at our pristine, pure state that we were when we were young. We're always getting more used, more. We're doing more, and every time we do anything, we've used ourselves a little bit more, and we've used that, you know, thing, that object more, and it's more farther from its pristine state, which is what Virgo sort of aims for. That's really the goal of Virgo. The blessing in that is that we tend towards health. We tend towards wanting to mitigate the reality of aging or using ourselves and our stuff and all that by cleaning and healing and purifying. And when it comes to our bodies, that's, you know, obviously something that we need to do sometimes. So it's good times for fasting, for taking herbal remedies, for tuning into those alternative practices, those holistic practices that are actually, you know, not that alternative, because they're the ones that have been around for many centuries. It's a time for plants, to have plants around you, greenery around you, that new life, that freshness makes us feel alive and makes us feel new again, or more pure, purifying our air. It's a time when we can really take stock of what is not clean, what is not organized, what is not healthy, and start to bring those things into place and categorize them, because Virgo's great at categorizing. So maybe, you know, organizing stuff, getting rid of things you don't need anymore, clutter, decluttering. It's a time when we can make our world more pure and more beautiful in that way. And certainly our bodies. Certainly we can, you know, have massages and get self-care and stuff like this that we might not normally feel inclined to do. So it's definitely a beautiful time for reset in our health and well-being and in our environment. And the Venus part of us is going to want to make things beautiful. And of course, in Virgo, beautiful is pure, beautiful is clean, beautiful is new. So that's where we're at, and we're very early degrees. We're at 5 degrees, and planet Mercury is in exact same degrees as Venus. So the two of them moved into Virgo and are now at the same place. And Mercury is the opposite of Venus. Venus is debilitated in Virgo. Mercury is exalted in Virgo. It's its own sign. That's not usually an exaltation point for a planet, but it is in this case. And it's a place where our speech is more grounded, our speech is more precise, and it's more objective. We're able to say what is, as opposed to feeling all these emotional ties to something being a certain way, or trying to convince or be impassioned, or all these other ways that we might speak, especially coming from a cycle of Cancer and Leo. In Cancer, we might have been really kind of emotional and grabby and clingy and, not really speaking clearly. And in Leo, we might have been bombastic and trying to control or teach people things with our speech. With Virgo, we're just going to be more clean and clear with our communication. And since the two planets are joined, you will see communication up with relationships. Sometimes Mercury in Virgo can be a bit robotic feeling to many of us who don't have that as a natal placement, or who don't necessarily have like an Earth sign or Gemini as their Mercury sign. It can feel a little cold because it's so much just about the facts and figures and not about the other emotional things that many of us communicate with. But with Venus joined there's going to be a niceness added in, and a relational quality added into our speech. And also that exalted planet joined a debilitated planet causes what we call a Nichabanga. And this is a situation where the effects of the debilitation are mutated, are changed. They're not eradicated, they're not totally reversed, but they are helped in some way. There's a gift that's being given, and the gift is exalted Mercury. So Venus might be sort of in that nitpicky state and seeing what's wrong with everything and feeling like things aren't pure enough and feeling like we're not pure enough, so then someone else is going to think we're not pure enough and all these kind of things. But Mercury is there sort of saving the day with our communication and with our capacity to go into objective thinking and our capacity to be like, well, that's probably not what the person was saying. When they said they like the color green, they probably didn't mean they hate the color white that we're wearing right now, or whatever it is that we might have in our head. So there's a rationale available to us, and certainly a capacity to communicate in clear and effective terms. So this is a blessing for us in this time, especially considering that we've been through a lot with relationships. Venus going through Cancer, through that sort of emotional situation where we're feeling used, and then into Leo where we're feeling kind of, like we should be the leaders and the kings and the queens and everybody should be bowing down to us, to this stage now where it's in a state of debilitation, which is, pretty bad for relationships usually. This Mercury is helping quite a bit. It can help start to pull us out of the rut we've been in relations, and start to segue our way to where Venus will join into Libra, its own sign, and we'll have much more comfortable energy with our relational planet and with our sense of happiness and pleasure and compromise and harmony. That's a big part of Venus, is compromise and harmony. And in Virgo, we are able to have some of that, especially with Mercury there. There is a capacity to compromise more, certainly, than in Leo. And in Cancer, we might have been compromising too much. So here we are, and we're moving into humbler times and more grounded times, and certainly times when we're more aware of others and ourselves, and how we can find a peaceful middle ground, and how we can find a place where we all get our needs met. And that's really what's been kind of lacking the last couple months and making it challenging. Of course, Mars is still joined to the Sun in 3 degrees. We still have very combust Mars in Leo. Both Mars and the Sun are in good dignity. The Sun is in its own sign of Leo. Again, this is the sidereal zodiac, so this is not the Western tropical system. This is very highly accurate to the sky and its actual depictions. And Mars is very good dignity as well in Leo. It's where we're more disciplined, where we're more courageous, where we're more willing to do right action. So that's great, but that combustion, that proximity of Mars and the sun makes us still have that short fuse. I talked about it a lot in the last video because we had it with several planets, both Venus and Mercury were also combust. But now we see that it's just this kind of, quick to anger moment where we just, that pissed me off and I'm gonna react. The positive side is our reactions in relationships will be way mellowed by the Virgo. We'll be much more likely to be fearful of somebody else's way of taking that, with the Venus being in Virgo. We'll be much more likely to be super aware of our language and how we express ourselves, with Mercury being in Virgo. And Mars is also giving drishti to Jupiter in the sign of Scorpio. And I did talk about this a little bit as well. They're very close to each other, 1 degree apart. And that reflection of Mars onto Jupiter can make us have this specific reaction when we feel like someone's attacking our values, or we feel like someone's attacking what we believe and what inspires us and what we really care about in the world. That can be a place of fire. But it can also be a place where we finally have the courage to look in ourselves. Jupiter's been in Scorpio for a very long time. This is an alignment that happened in October of 2018, and it's coming around until this November of 2019, so a few more months. And we're seeing that our, I guess, not a few more months anymore, we're quite close to November, but we're seeing that we're finally at that part where we're able to really examine ourselves in our teachings, in our wisdom, in our reach for all these different practices and teachings and teachers and things that help us. We're more and more willing to look at ourselves because Jupiter's been retrograde for so long, because we've had to deal with these sort of reactionary parts of ourselves and be humbled. We're maybe most able to now look at ourselves and be like, hey, this person's doing that and that's making me mad, or they're, somehow violating my belief system, but how am I also doing that? Or how am I also part of this? What is the mirror that I'm looking in here? And that can be exactly what the beautiful lesson of Jupiter and Scorpio is. So we do have Jupiter, Sun, Mars all in great dignity right now, and that's helping a lot. And Mercury, of course, exalted. So this helps us have the courage to self-examine as opposed to just blaming others. Saturn and Ketu are again in exact degrees, Ketu being the south node of the moon, that eclipse point, where we still have that underpinning of fear that is just kind of sitting there, and that's making us unsettled. And Saturn is going to be going into direct motion September 18th. So right now where we are with Saturn is actually stationary. We're still retrograde, stationary retrograde. We're moving into stationary direct. Saturn is a very slow moving planet. That's why it's retrograde for so long, and that's why it stays in a sign for 2.5 years. So this energy right now is Saturn just halting, and it kind of takes a long time to get going again also. So technically on the 18th, it's going to start moving forward, but this slow place that it's in is where we are, and we won't see it start to move immediately on the 18th. We'll just see it start to roll forward because it's so slow. And that energy that we're feeling with K2 pulling us away from this is this place we have to taste and disgust and all of these different things. And if you want to know more about K2 specifically in your chart, I do have a free report that's still going on right now where you can find out where K2 and Rahu, the north and the south nodes of the moon, the two eclipse points, are in your specific chart. Everyone has a different placement, a different house that's being the most affected by this axis, or two houses that are being the most affected by this axis. And it makes a huge difference as to what your karma looks like in this year, what you're dealing with, and what's unfolding for you. So wherever K2 is also where Saturn is. And they're together through this whole alignment. It's a K2 Saturn party, and it's bringing disgust, distaste, and withdrawal from K2 and fear from Saturn. And since Saturn's been retrograde, it's been a lot of internalized fear, a lot of underneath the surface, and also a lack of ability to actually commit to anything in the outside world. Because normally Saturn is where we really just roll up our sleeves and do the hard work and actually humble ourselves in a direction. And when it's retrograde, we have trouble with that commitment. We're not really sure. what it is we're committing to. So we see that forward motion starting again on the 18th. We're going to really start to move more forward with what we do, and what we feel really strongly committed to. Mars will be moving in on the 24th into Virgo, and it will be in direct drishti to Saturn instead of Jupiter then at that point. So we'll see that Mars courage, especially as it moves forward into the month and gets a little bit further into Virgo, we'll see Mars start to give a lot of courage and action-oriented energy to that Saturn and to that K2, unfortunately. So we'll see some militance and anger and things like that coming up, but it will also start to light a fire underneath our commitments and really start to create some more forward motion with that. It can be scary, and again, it can bring about things like militance and anger and some of the stuff we saw in the early part of the summer. But it also starts to move things that have been stuck and places where we've been really fear-driven, and starts to make things explode. But that is or even implode. But that again is something that gets us out of these ruts or these stuck places where we really are sitting in our fear more than anything else. So it can be scary or even, bad, but it's movement. And by the end of this year, we're really starting to move into much more peaceful times and much more pleasant times, because Saturn is going to move early next year into Capricorn, its own sign, and Jupiter is going to be moving into its own sign of Sagittarius in November. So we're seeing these alignments start to shift, and we won't have Saturn join K2 anymore, and we'll really be moving past some of the anger, fear, militance, violence, some of the crazy geological events that have surrounded all these different alignments, and we spent all of 2018 in that really intense Mars K2 battle. So we're seeing ourselves kind of shift out of that a little bit, and that will be a much better end to the year. But for now, we're still kind of in the throes, and we're slowly clawing our way out. So I hope that you do have some practices, some meditative practices, some ways of really caring for yourself, nurturing yourself, calming yourself, especially, again, plant medicines and things like that can be really helpful for you right now. Ayurveda is a beautiful system that is within the same Vedic system that can offer you healing remedies and ways of even assessing what is imbalanced for you. There's, traditional Chinese medicine, there's Western herbalism, there's all different ways that you can approach that. And there's, of course, just, cooking and eating food that you've grown or that you have contact with, and planting gardens and having plant life around you, and cleaning your space and cleaning your body space, your temple. So I hope this is a good full moon for you on this Friday 13th. And we'll see you again real soon. You can like, comment, and share. And please sign up for that free report if you haven't yet, to know where the Rahu Ketu, or the North Node and the South Node of the Moon, are affecting you right now. Namaste.